All right, well, I think I'm going to get started now. So you should be able to see the slides, should be able to see me. I'll probably switch off the video monitor for most of the presentations, but most of this presentation, but I'm glad we are able to get this off and running. I have everyone muted at the moment, and I'll probably be able to unmute that at the end for question and answers. But if you have any questions during the presentation, if you put it into the chat, and I'll try and keep an eye out for that. But we'll definitely have time at the end of the presentation. This session that I'm talking about today is going to be about some of the things that I think are important aspects of software user assistance, and I'm always updating the session. In fact, I was just the other day adding in some new slides, some new ideas about things, and so that's really what this is all about, is my thoughts on things that I would emphasize to others, that I do emphasize about others, about where we stand in terms of supporting our various types of software applications, whether that's software that we ship to sell, or it's software that's used for internal purposes, whatever that might be. So as I mentioned, I'm just going to pop off the video there for the moment and move over to this first slide, which talks about comprehensive support options. And I've talked about this for a while when I've visited different groups. In fact, this time of year I usually like to visit a lot of different professional meetings. I'm just buried in projects and not able to do that. But this particular area is one that I think is growing with people, but maybe not as much as I would have thought that people would. Not because of anything I say, but just because the different elements that are on this list. But the idea is that people learn in different ways. We're always having new technologies at our disposal, and I think that it's important to think of all the different possible ways that we might be able to inform our customers, and be ready to have those available to use them in different projects, and to get off the safe spot of having a traditional PDF printed manual and a CHM compiled help file, or even web help for that matter, because there's so many different ways that we can get information across from our customers. Get away from procedural information. I mean, still provide that, but just look at a lot of different ways to get information out. And you can see there's a lot of different things here. I'm going to talk specifically about some of them in this presentation, but this is a list of different components that I've used in a variety of projects, and I kind of go back to my own version of this list when I start a project, just to refresh my own memory that there's all these different ways that we can present information to customers. And some of the newest technologies are ones that in fact are of a lot of interest to people that are using new devices today. For example, using YouTube and Wiki and getting information via Twitter. So my first point, which is going to carry over into some of these subsequent slides, is just to take a broad view of what user assistance is. For example, I think that doing informational videos can be a great way to get out information. A lot of software is very visual. A lot of times it's easier to show something than to say something. And it definitely takes some time to be able to acquire the skills to do video, but I think it can definitely be a great alternative to traditional documentation. And I do say that it is an alternative because in a lot of cases I think it's much easier for somebody to consume information when it's in a text form. It's obviously easier to distribute that information, and for the most part to produce that information it's easier. But getting back to that first point, different options, different ways of presenting information. And interestingly, I've seen anecdotally through my own projects and people that I talk to that uh, people consuming information on the newest mobile devices, the smallest mobile devices are phones, that people gravitate to getting information that's presented in video. And you would think it would be the opposite, that it would only be in small screens that that would be appreciated, but it's just a different culture, and people that are using their phones like to see video information on those devices. So that's another reason to consider it there. And if you do construct videos, you want to do a good job of it. But also notice on this particular slide, which is from for the Autodesk software, and by the way, that company is embraced using videos quite a bit. It started as sort of a skunk works and got very popular, and so they do quite a bit of that for their documentation. But notice where this is located. This is being hosted on YouTube, and that's a very smart play for Autodesk. A lot of times, I'd say most of the videos that I'm familiar with for companies are stored in their own, are on their own servers. But by doing it through video, you then are employing all the power of YouTube, and for that matter Google, that owns YouTube, for people to be able to find information. And so by hosting information on YouTube, you're probably going to get more people finding it, and also it doesn't cost you anything. It's essentially free hosting for that. And again, if you have any questions or comments, you can put that into the chat, and we'll have a question and answer period at the end. And another example of different styles, different types of user assistance, some alternative formats. Twitter, I think, is definitely one of those. And this is a technology that I'm surprised that more user assistance groups don't employ. Whether that's for software that you're selling subscriptions to, or outright, or for internal purposes. It can be a really good way to get out quick updates about documentation, to provide a continuing series of tips, links to information that have tips and techniques that you've put together. And the thing about Twitter that really fits into this model of being attentive to our customers is that for someone to get your information through Twitter, they need to follow you. So if you set up a Twitter account that's for your user assistance information and you start to get followers, you know that those people specifically are interested in information that you're presenting to them. And it's a resource that doesn't cost anything. It's free. There's no tools or other resources that take up a lot of your time, except actually getting out the tweets, which is something that you'd want to do on a regular basis. But I think it's definitely something to think about, and fits into that world of emerging ways to present information to our customers. Another area that I think is interesting to explore, and I've only seen this through for fairly large-scale apps or applications or software companies that have lots of customers. But it's the idea that you send out an email to your customer after they start using your software that has tips and tricks about how to work with that software. Example from Pandora is one. For every time I buy something from Apple, I get a similar email. And these aren't marketing emails. These are emails that are specifically there to give me information to help me in getting started with working with that product. In this Pandora example, there's some really useful information that I was able to link to that I probably wouldn't have gone out and found by looking through the Pandora site. So this gave me a reason to go and look for more detail about this information. Now, one of the things that makes this possible is if you know who your customer is, so you have their email information, and then you're able to use that. And then a challenge that's associated with that is that the marketing or sales department often jealously covets the email, and for good reason protects it so that there's not spam to those customers, and there may be privacy issues. But assuming that your customers have allowed you to contact them, then I would really look to see if you're able to do something like this, where you could get out a information-specific email to new customers, with the underline being that it's helpful information and it doesn't include upgrade ads and things like that. Now, for many years, we've been able to embed user assistance text directly into the software, into our software applications, and I really believe that that's the single best way that you can get information to your users, as opposed to them going to a separate documentation site, clicking on a help button in your software. And a lot of times just having a phrase of 10 or 12 words for a particular screen can be the difference between somebody needing to go to help and understanding what to do in a particular page. I still don't see this happening as much as I would expect among the user assistance community. It's definitely grown in terms of people doing that kind of work. What I do find is when I see software applications and I look at who is developing user interface text, it rarely seems to be people from the technical communication world, and I think that's well, it's completely cultural. There's no reason that TechCom people can't own every word in the software UI. In fact, I think they should own every word in the software UI. And so it's a matter of making a case that, in fact, we're the wordsmiths and the people that should be in charge of that. So it's more of an interpersonal issue to make that happen. But I do see in terms of who is doing that, the people that have the UX in their title seem to be writing all kinds of information that goes into the user interface. And that's even in situations where technical communication people are doing documentation for that same product. So I encourage you to figure out ways to get involved with that, because that's puts you front and center in helping our customers. Another area that I wanted to mention is one that you may not have thought about, but that's to write a blog that's about tips and tricks for your particular product. And this is a different type of writing. It's different than writing procedures, procedural information. You're telling a story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so for that reason, I think it's good to get into it, to just keep our hand in different types of writing. But also that it's a different way for people to learn. So it is different from procedural information, and somebody who will be interested in this will be interested in it for a different reason than working with a procedure. And then another good reason to do that is that this gives you something that you'll never get in any type of traditional software documentation. If you look on the screen, you can see what I'm talking about, and that is the byline. And with doing a blog, with doing a column like this, a regular column, it's almost implied that you're going to have a byline associated with that, whereas we never get a byline otherwise with our work. And so that's just a good way to elevate your profile within and outside of your organization. And some organizations already have developer blogs. If yours is like that, that makes the path a little easier. If you don't have that available, well, it's not really that hard to construct something like this. It's just a matter of getting the permission in the website real estate to be able to get yourself going. And I'm always talking about the latest technology, but the printed manual hasn't gone away. And I always like to point people to this slide because probably most people don't realize it, but Apple has a full set of printed manuals for all of their products, including the latest products. So iPhones, iPads, everything that they come out with, they put out a printed manual, and they're very, I shouldn't say printed manual, they come out with a manual that's in PDF format, but essentially it's formatted for an 8.5 by 11 page with the idea that it may very well be printed out. And they use descriptive graphics. They also have if you could just hold on for one moment, I just need to check on something. Sorry about that. Sorry. Well, I think we'll be able to wait. Just hold on, just one moment. All right, so I'm moving forward again. So what I was saying is they do a good job at their PDFs, and it's obviously not something that most people using these devices are looking at or looking for, but they are there. And so if anybody ever tells you that a printed manual isn't useful, then you can just point them to Apple's site where they can see all these manuals in play. So I think there's still an opportunity or still a need to do that, because again, different people like to consume information in different ways. And let's say that 1% of Apple users are interested in getting information this way. Well, they have hundreds of millions of users. So suddenly you're talking about millions of people using this kind of content. And then one thing that I think is maybe the most important way to help people work with find your user assistance information is to embrace Google and search engines more broadly. And I don't have any data on this, but anecdotally, I think that it's likely that more people than not are using Google to be able to find information that they're looking for about software products, even if the software product that is right in front of them has a help menu. And that's just due to the success and the power of Google. And so because of that, well, for one thing, that can be a help to us, but you have to recognize that because of that, that's the main way that people are going to be searching for information about your product. So you want to know that when people use Google, that in fact your information is going to be visible and ideally up at the top of the list. And so there's one thing that has to happen in order for your information to be visible to Google, and that's for it to be on a public-facing server. And if it's locked away in a silo, then Google isn't going to be able to get at it. So that has to happen first of all. And then by writing good information, authoritative information, and making sure your customers know that your information is available, then that helps to build your Googleability and help you elevate your topics to make sure they're at the top of the list. And then as you get more involved in it, you can get into some search engine optimization techniques, which can be help increase that even more. But one thing that everyone can do is to go to Google and type in information directly related to your product. And let me skip ahead to this next slide here. Oops. And take a look at this one, which is related to Microsoft Outlook. And so you might want to do something similar to this. So in this example, I typed in how to print a calendar in Outlook. And what happened was that the first two hits were take me to articles that are specifically what I'm looking for, and they're from Microsoft. So the customer wins, Microsoft wins, because the proper information is coming up. And I would encourage everyone to do that with their own products. Start typing things into Google about how to work with your products and see where that takes you. Now, one of the things that you don't want to happen is, well, first of all, if you have any kind of large user base at all, I can almost guarantee that even if you're not making information that's visible on Google about your product, other people probably have already, and you can see that. So you type in information about your product and see what comes up. And ideally, you want your links to your information to be right up at the top. So this is an area that you would definitely test out, check. Obviously, some products have security issues, or they may be subscription-based products. But even in those cases, I would want to have a conversation with whoever is in charge of security and find out whether, in fact, the documentation that you're providing needs to be behind the firewall. Sure, the rest of the software does, but does information about how to print a report? Probably not, but at least have that conversation, to find out, what information you can make publicly visible. And then a related topic is in making that information that's publicly available, you may have to adjust your the way that you produce the information. So in this example on the right, you can see the CHM HTML help version of Outlook help that you would see clicking on the local help menu in the product, and then what you see is what would come up if you did a Google search and went to the web-based information. And Microsoft's really good about doing some type of single source content that writes out essentially the same content but for different output targets. So you can see that the two procedures are very similar. But then you do get into some fine-tuning where you'll notice in the left-hand version, which is the web help version, right under the title it says applies to and gives the version number. In fact, for this particular topic, there are different pages for different version numbers because there's some subtly different things about the procedure. And so that's an important consideration, because if somebody does a Google search and they're going to print an Outlook, they want to find something on printing an Outlook calendar, the top hit may not be the version number that somebody was looking for. So they might find the one for version 3, but actually what they're looking for is the one for version 2000. 10. So I think it's always good to have that in the web help version or the public-facing version and have it part of your metadata as well. Now, one of the biggest things that has emerged over the past 5 years is what I call the explosion of the device matrix, where there's just so many mobile devices, and if you know, if we're if we're kind of buried just in the desktop environment for our work, it's hard to see that coming as much. Obviously, in our personal lives, we see that happening all over the place, but that's just going to continue to grow and grow, and most people are going to be wanting to consume most software applications from these emerging sets of devices, whether it's a phone, a tablet, a large screen television, home entertainment system, even automotive. And so the question is, how are you able to support that? And what I like to think we try to do is something that I call a graceful adaptation of content. And this is a prototype example that I actually do a separate session on called multi-screen content authoring, but I'm just going to show this one slide from that, which is showing an actual scenario. The screen capture on the very left is showing what a particular site looks like in a desktop environment, then to the right what it looks like in the iPad, and if you'll notice the sidebar is missing from that, and the banner is slightly different. As we move over to the right with the Nexus 7, the 7-inch tablet, there's even more information that's been pulled out of there, and for the iPhone it's a very bare bones version. Now all of this is based on a single source page for this page of information that we're looking at, and cascading style sheets and media queries are dynamically adjusting that content in an intelligent and graceful way for different devices. So if you're interested in that, you might want to check for one of my other presentations that'll be given this month or in the next week or so on this particular topic. But it's definitely something to be thinking about with your authoring tools. How do you have a strategy for effectively presenting information on different types of devices? And the one thing that you don't want is a situation where somebody is pinching and pulling at their phone screen to be able to read your information. Another aspect of that that I talk about in that presentation has to deal with dramatically changing what your procedures look like when they're consumed on a small screen device. And so here with this app that I worked on, the help topic that you can see all the way on the right is a very it doesn't use traditional grammar. It uses sentence fragments, but it gets the point across, and the main thing that I was trying to accomplish here is to get it into one screen full of information, which now brings me to a larger point related to small screen devices, which is that going to a traditional table of contents hierarchy is you're just setting yourself up for a big fail. I've been doing a lot of work for a UX company called Blink here in Seattle, and they do a lot of usability testing, and they do a lot of usability testing with mobile devices, with cameras, looking at how people are using mobile devices. And anytime people have to go to a hierarchy, it always slows people down. And if people have to go to a hierarchy in help to look for information, there's almost no chance that people, one, are going to find what they're looking for, or that they're happy with that experience. And most of our, well, for that matter, all of our traditional help authoring tools are still trying to, come to grips with this. But trying to migrate a table of contents that goes to 2 or 3 hierarchy levels that might work well in a desktop environment just doesn't work with small screen devices. You can do it, and authoring tools have options that let you make that happen, and it might look kind of cool from our point of view, but realistically it's not a good option, and you can just test that yourself and see what happens with your own users. But I would encourage everybody to craft their information so that it fits in, that a given topic easily fits and can be read in a single panel, and that you do away with navigation as much as possible in your small screen help system. And there's going to be more and more different types of devices, all with different types of screens, and it's hard to see what a lot of us do, how it applies in the future. But as I said, it just continues to move forward. The screen in the top right is a screen showing a screen in a car dash at a recent car show, and that screen is intended to be presenting touch-enabled apps to the driver. Now, whether or not it's appropriate for the driver to be working with apps as they're speeding down I-5 is, that's a separate conversation, but that ship has sailed. I've been going around to a lot of dealerships and checking out different systems, and they all have something in the works for in-dash app, the ability to use apps in an in-dash entertainment system. And in terms of working with mobile apps, I like to talk about the 3 C's, which are really important with this new set of devices, which is that any type of help that you're putting together ideally is contextual, that it fits in with the app, that it doesn't look like a separate help system, that it's not a separate help system that appears in the browser, that it's right there within the app in some way, that it conforms to the look and feel of the app, so that the help system looks like it's just part of what people are working on, that it's conditional, which means that it's giving people information in this mobile small screen situation that is different from what they might need in a desktop environment. That's something that requires you to think about what the differences are between working with the desktop version of an app and a mobile version. And there are differences, and this is really important to just take some time and think about, and to talk with your users and learn about it. And you're probably going to find that there's a different subset of activities that people are interested in using an app when they're on the go than when they're sitting at their desk. And then the concise item I already talked about. And this is just looking at that wide array of devices, and also that there's different interaction types that we're getting involved in. So touch, hand gestures, voice, and NFC, near field communication, from all these different platform developers that you may or may not have worked with before. I like to show this example because this is, this actually isn't that far out there in terms of using NFC or near field communications, but the idea is that objects will be tagged with information that can then be shared to a device. And I grabbed this one because it was interesting, because the idea is that in this magazine that a page about the Lexus was set up so that when you put your phone in proximity to it, it would instantly bring you to a page of information about the car. However, they realize that this early in the game they need to be able to have information about how to use that technology. And so there's a very explicit presentation of how to use your phone to be able to get that information with the page, kind of a foreign concept. And I think over the next couple of years, that's going to be a situation that we have with a lot of different devices, for phones, tablets, for car dash systems, home entertainment systems, is that not only are we going to be providing procedures about how to work with our technologies, or procedures about how to work with the software, but also procedures that may have to give people information about working with different devices. And this is an example showing how conditional text, which most of our authoring tools support in different forms, can be used to change the content for different types of devices. So the one for the laptop has the most information, including a feedback statement, the portfolio packager screen appears, and also an image, the Chicago list box. Moving over to the right, that's the version that would appear on the iPhone, and it loses the feedback statement and the image. And then moving down below, there's one that's set up for a home entertainment system that is putting in the icon for select if you are using the Microsoft Connect. So this is a very device-specific set of instructions, and that hover hand, or that hand, represents the icon that Microsoft calls hover, which is essentially to select something from the screen. And yeah, ideally all of this would come from single source content repository, and you would have a way to write out the information to the different targets. And just speaking about Microsoft, I've been working with Windows 8. I hope you've been doing that as well in some form, at least to see what's going on with that platform, because there's a lot of changes happening, and it's already out there. And you can, a couple of different things to think about. One is that the style that Microsoft is using itself for presenting information is different. So the screen in the top left is an example of what that looks like. So you might want to just take a look at that from a design perspective, but also look at what they're doing in terms of language. So notice that they're having to support both the click, the mouse, and the tap, the touch, within the same procedure. And if your apps are going to be running in the Windows 8 environment, then you have to recognize that people are going to be thinking that they're able to tap or click with information. If you support touch, then you need some way to express that using the right verbs, tap, double tap, and so on, pinch, zoom. And if you're not using touch, that's something that you might have to have in there as well. Notice in the two screen captures, Microsoft handles it in a different way. So even they haven't figured out exactly what the format is that they want to use. So up in the top screen capture, it has touch as the primary step, and then in parentheses underneath is the mouse click step, whereas in the lower one, they have tap and click combined in the same in that same window. But what are they going to do when it suddenly is voice enabled as well? Is it going to be tap, click, say? It's kind of interesting to think about where we're going with this. Just finally, some other things that I see as happening to think about that may come into your sphere of development, and one of those is personalization. If you know your organization is, if for example your software is subscription based, then you know, and it's online. It's an online delivered web-based application. You have a relationship with each customer that's different than software that's installed on somebody's computer where there's no link. And so potentially when somebody logs in to use software, your system would recognize that person and be able to provide them with information that's appropriate for what they like to work on, for what they're commonly involved with. And so something like this can have the effect of reducing what's in the table of contents. So maybe there's a subset of help topics that would apply to some person who's only used a certain set of features within your software. So if you do have some type of subscription service where you know which users are using your software when, it's something to think about a little bit. Some other items, well, I already mentioned video presentation. I think there's going to be more and more of that, so I would strongly encourage you to get the skills for working with that if you haven't already. More and more of our authoring is based on structured authoring, so separating the data, the words, from the presentation, the page layout, the bold and italic. And the example that I presented earlier from the prototype of showing the same information being presented differently on different devices, that's totally made possible by structured authoring. So essentially I'm tagging information as types of information. So a sidebar or a conceptual paragraph, or identifying a procedure as a whole. So then I'm able to manipulate those objects to be hidden, to be displayed in different ways on appropriate devices. And most of our authoring tools support that. More and more of them are doing it in better and better ways. So it's definitely something to embrace and think about if you're looking for authoring tools. Server-side deployments is something that more and more organizations are doing, and that kind of gets into some of the things I mentioned already about subscription based software. But if you're doing, if all of your content is based on a server, it's web-based content, then obviously it's possible to dynamically update that information on a regular basis. But you know what? A lot of us are working with software that is web-based, that people are consuming from a browser, and theoretically the information, the help information that's there would adjust as we find out new things about how people are working with our software. But I find that even though that a lot of information rarely changes, and that kind of gets to a separate point, maybe the one that I want to close on, is just the idea of the importance of testing. And in all of the software development world, for doing just about everything except documentation, we're involved in usability testing. It's more or less required. It's recognized as extremely important to do usability testing on all aspects of our software and the user interface to find out whether what we design is actually working. On the user assistance side with documentation, I've found that it rarely happens, and that's purely cultural. But I firmly believe that if you haven't tested your help system, watch people use it, watch people work through your manuals, that you really don't know anything about what has been effective or not. Unless you have some type of feedback mechanism, some testing mechanism to evaluate that, you don't know. You may be doing things that you don't have to do and wasting money. very well may be likely that there's just a few topics that are vitally important, and you should spend a lot more time on those particular topics. I reflect on all the work that I've done over the years, and I've done a lot of documentation, and a lot of it without testing. And sometimes I wonder whether anybody used anything that I was putting together. I hope that they did, but I really don't know, and that's kind of scary. So that's something I definitely stress thinking about is having some type of testing format. So that brings me to the end of these slides. I'm going to open up for questions, but I also wanted to mention that our Writers UA conference is coming up, and so I think we have a lot of great speakers. It's going to be in Seattle in March. So that's not too far from where you're at. And you might want to look at that and see if it's something that you're interested in participating in. I'm going to send a link to where you can look at the slides, and your chapter leadership can get that out to you. If you're interested in the conference, I'll also include a reminder that there's a promotional code for a discount of $50 off of the current prices for the conference. So hopefully we'll see you at that. Also, I'm always posting a lot of information on my Walensky.com site and on my blog, so you might want to check that out. We also have a resource directory there with information about authoring tools. Let me just look into the chat. If you have any questions, it's a good time to pop them in there, and I'll be happy to cover your questions. Let's see, Pam had a question. What about voice help and specifically Siri? And well, for one thing, I think finally, after talking about it for 20-some years, we're at the point where we are seeing voice being used actively in applications, and ideally then that becomes a way that we can provide one form of user assistance to our customers. There's still going to be people that want to read information, but especially in a situation where people are on the go, voice help can definitely be useful. The issue here is how to be able to deliver that. And you look at something like the Siri technology for the iPhone, and it's really interesting technology. The idea to be able to just ask a question and get an answer. Ideally, a customer would be able to ask a question about how to do something with the software, and Siri would recognize it and deliver the information that we provided. But that's the part that's missing. Right now, Siri and its equivalent on other platforms is limited. There's not an API that we can tap into. And I'm looking forward to the possibility that these APIs for voice on Windows and iOS and Android will be opened up in a way so that going back to my slide showing the different types of interactions, we can also have scripts, voice scripts, that could be used in different situations if the customer needed it. So we're still a bit away from making that a practical use, but I think it's definitely going to happen. Are there any other questions? If I'm going to type it into the chat. And or if it's a question that you wanted to talk about, just note that in the chat, and I can unmute you. Let's see, June asked a question. The example you showed of Microsoft Help for Windows 8 was kind of clumsy looking with the alternate wording. Do you know of other methods besides MS? let's see, I'm not quite sure what June means by that. June, I'll unmute you, and if you feel like it, you could, do you want to just talk about your question? Should be able to hear you now. Maybe you don't have a Microsoft. Okay, there's no mic available there. In other words, I mean the longer version. Sorry, no. Well, yeah, I'm not really sure what you're getting at there. I mean, I definitely think that what I showed you in that, the screen capture is in fact, a clumsy way of presenting that information. I'll just go back one slide. And this is actually a big improvement over 6 months ago when I had the Windows 8 beta release or developers release. And I think it's just a matter of them figuring out what they want to be their standards for this kind of thing. And in fact, if you go to Office 2013, the version that came on the Windows RT, and it's probably going to be in the same thing in the Surface devices, that help doesn't look like either of these. And it doesn't look like the help that came with Office 2010. And so I think Microsoft's going to have a lot of different variants just because different departments do things in different ways. Let's see if there's any other questions. Let's see. Now, you're related to the language issues that I mentioned. There was a question I got privately related to that. In the screen where I had the different verbs, I do create an interaction table, and I do a whole presentation just on this particular subject. And so select, in fact, would be a generic verb to use to replace this. However, a lot of times generic verbs in certain situations don't actually seem to work as well as saying click or tap, especially if select could be interpreted to be done in different ways. So using generic language definitely may be the approach that you want to take, but again, it's just something that you're going to want to analyze and think about. But yeah, probably in the long term, we just may be using a generic language for our procedures. All right, well, are there any other questions? Well, if you do have other questions, you're welcome to send me an email, and I'll send you a link to these slides that'll come from your chapter leaders, so yeah, feel free to get me information anytime. I hope you're able to get some good information out of this, and hopefully I'll see you in a live context sometime in the future. So thanks a lot for attending this session.